Friends of the Murphys Volunteer Library. Thank you all for coming. Our guest tonight is Joanne Greene, who wrote By Accident, and I'm sure several of you already know her or seen her speak. She came highly recommended as very inspirational. The book is very inspirational, and I'm just going to let you do it.
Thank you all so much for coming. This is the first time I've spoken in a library, which is exciting, and I want to do more of that. So, thanks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my background, and then I'm going to read the very beginning of the book because it starts with the accident, and it's called By Accident for two reasons. One, because I was an accident. My parents were done having kids. They had a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, and then, whoops. So that impacted me in many ways because I didn't really feel like I fit into the family. All my cousins were either around 7, 8, 9 years older than me or 12, 13, 14 years older than me. And my parents were much older than everyone else's parents. And so there was that theme. And then I've had a phenomenal life. A series of things happened that were very difficult and challenging. But one thing is that I was a person in constant motion, always achieving, hoping to achieve, trying to achieve, wanting to be the best partner, mother, daughter, sister, spouse, all of it. And it took an accident, a really traumatic accident, for me to make some big changes in my life. So that's the overall premise. As we start this book, when the accident happened, it was 2012, and I had just come off of a period of time of losing my mother, my sister, and my brother in a 4-year period, and had been to the depths of grief and was really finally getting fully back up to speed. So when this happened, it was a moment of really, as I will share at the beginning. And then I'm going to stop and read different parts throughout, and then we'll have questions. Hopefully you'll have questions. As I step into the crosswalk, there's a sudden deafening sound. An explosion, maybe? Then I'm airborne, thrown onto the hood of a car. What the hell? I silently scream to the universe, or God, or no one. Seriously? All I can hear is an ear-splitting cacophony. All I feel is wild, uncontrolled movement. Stop the car, stop the car. The car is catapulted down North San Pedro Road, my head banging against its windshield. I slip off the hood onto the ground, alive. I can't move, can't speak. I lift my head and blink my eyes a few times. Things come into focus. To my right, people crowd the sidewalk, staring at me with their mouths open in horror, like in Munch's painting. I hear someone yelling, "Oh my God, oh my God!" I slowly turn my head in the direction of the sound, but see nameless faces. Cars are turned in different directions. People are running toward me. I'm lying splayed in the middle of the street and feel my short cotton print dress hiked up, naked thighs on display, like that matters. I keep blinking, but the scene doesn't change. A white pickup truck stops in the middle of the street. A man wearing an Oakland A's jersey jumps out and runs toward me. "You're fine," he yells. "You'll be fine." A woman is yelling at him to stop talking to me. Why is she angry with him? He says I'm fine. Maybe he's right. I don't see any blood, but how could I be fine? Horns blare. I think that's my friend's teenage son on the other side of the street. "Is that Joanne?" I hear him ask, panicked. He gets back into his mother's car, and they drive off. Maybe this is a dream. I'm going to stop there and just paraphrase what happens next. Sirens, paramedics. I'm put into an ambulance, as it turns out, into the same ambulance as the woman who was driving the car that hit me. What actually happened in the accident was 5:30 in the afternoon, broad daylight. I was going home to watch a debate that was going to start at 6 between Barack Obama and then candidate Mitt Romney, so 2012. And my car was parked on the other side of the street. It was a crosswalk. She stopped for me, and just as I got in front of her, a truck came at full speed and slammed into her, which caused her to slam into me. I was taken to the hospital. Someone who works at our JCC saw this happen, ran over to me, and by then the police had got my purse and handed it to her, and she said, "We have to call Fred." Fred's my husband. And somehow I said his phone number. It came to me. I was in complete shock. I didn't know it yet, but I had 4 pelvic fractures, and the whole right side was crushed, and a concussion and other injuries, and told Fred to meet me at the hospital. And as soon as the ambulance pulled up, I saw him, and the first thing I said was, "I'm sorry." Why did I say I'm sorry? I'm going to pick up again here. I learned of Fred's tragic past in 1978 after we'd been dating for a while. While he certainly knew that his parents had both died when he was 7 years old, he didn't realize until his 20s that he was technically an orphan, a testament to how his grandparents enveloped the children with love after that fateful night, November 4th, 1962. Marvin and Martha, Fred's parents, were driving with his older sister Sandy when they were hit head-on by a drunk driver. Sandy, the only one to survive the accident, was hospitalized and missed 3 months of school. Fred, a whirling dervish of energy, adored baby of the family, was asleep at home when the police came and knocked on the door looking for an adult. Fred's brother, Neil, 6 years older, sent the officers to his aunt and uncle's house nearby. Fred's memory of the following few days are sketchy. Grown-ups crying, eating Hostess cupcakes, and drinking milk in front of the television set, holding Pug, the family's Boston Terrier, crying in the arms of his second-grade teacher, Miss Yamamoto. So for this to have happened, I mean, all the time we were raising our teenage sons, and they were assuring us that they would never drink and drive and that they would never get in a car with anyone else who had been drinking. We said, well, it's just not going to happen again. And yet, here I was. And so I pick up again here. This is the beginning of chapter 2. Being hit by a car is not my first blow, although it's probably the most literal, and it won't be my last, but it will be a catalyst for me. A sudden graphic stop to my constantly in-motion existence, my need to produce and achieve to feel worthy of love, my need to control everything because I've believed that it would make me safer. It will be the test that finally teaches me that my needs are masks and that control is an illusion. I've had plenty of opportunities, losses, hard ones, to learn to let go, but I grieved my losses and went right back to my old ways. The accident has stripped me, made me totally dependent on others, put cracks in my bones, and revealed cracks in my armor. I can't go back to my old ways, not easily anyway. Over time and through a series of other physical and emotional challenges, I will discover that losing control can be the best way to truly gain it. Letting go means letting in light, revealing my real power, and finally feeling that deep sense of peace that I'd been so desperate to find. So it's a book about resilience. And what I came to realize, and maybe you have already too, is that stuff's going to happen in our lives, out of our control. Illness will happen, accidents will happen, injuries will happen, loss will happen, and failure will happen. We will lose a job, a relationship won't work out, we will whatever. Go through tough economic times, whatever it is, things will happen. And we can't control that, but we can control how we react to it and how we respond. And so that's what I began to focus on pretty quickly after the accident, and in particular after getting out of the hospital. So I was hospitalized for 5 days. Definitely was my life was hanging in the balance because they couldn't get the internal bleeding under control. By the way, spoiler alert, totally fine. Don't have a single ounce of residual damage. I'm fine, like really fine. And which is a miracle too. And one doctor told me that would, just expect that you will have stuff, and I don't. even as the car hit me and I was flying through the air, because time elongates. I don't know if you've had that experience when you're in the middle of a crisis. Sometimes, yeah, you're nodding. Sometimes there's this sense that I've thought so many thoughts and really only 4 seconds just went by. But so my first reaction, as I said in the beginning, was, what the hell? And my next reaction immediately was, okay, let's do this. If this is what's happening, I'm going to do this. And it's one more challenge I'm going to meet. It's the biggest challenge I've ever met and maybe will ever meet, but I'm going to meet it. And I don't know where I got that from. I don't know where that strength came from. But I tend to think, because I've given it a lot of thought, that some of it comes from deep in my DNA. You know, many of us are descendants of really powerful people who were either pioneers or who were immigrants. And in my case, my grandparents, all my grandparents were immigrants, left Europe because they were facing religious persecution and needed also economic opportunity. And they came to this country not speaking a word of English and, you know, not having any formal education. Certainly my grandfather was 14. He came by himself on a ship, amazing, and landed in New York and figured it out. So I think that there's inner strength we can draw upon when times get tough. And I had this confidence somewhere that it was going to be okay. Now, having said that, were there times that I fell apart? Absolutely. Regularly. Completely freaking out with flashbacks of the accident, they told me that the recovery would be 1.5 years. How can you wrap your mind around 1.5 years? Like I had understood in the past 2 weeks, right? You can sort of think 2 weeks and you're going to be getting better that whole time. This is 1.5 years. There could be months where I see very little improvement. And that was true. I mean, I had some improvement at the very beginning, but then it would stall and no improvement. It's very, very tough. So I dug deep and I remembered these things that my mom had said to me, which I had rolled my eyes, as many of us do when our moms say things that sound perhaps corny at the moment. Or here was one: count your blessings. I vouch for this. It's the best thing you can do. Counting your blessings, trying to be in a state of gratitude has such an impact on your mental state and your ability to move through pain, physical or emotional, because it counterbalances this feeling of feeling sorry for yourself, which you're entitled to when something horrible is going on, but you don't want to dwell in that place. So to try to remember what are your blessings, what are your gifts, I found to be super helpful. Another thing that my mom used to say is, this too shall pass. Now, that one I really rolled my eyes because it said shall, so it made it sound kind of ancient. But it's true. Whatever you're feeling when you're in grief, if you've lost someone dear to you, it feels like that pain is going to last forever. When you're afraid of something, when someone you love is injured or ill and you're terrified that they're going to get a bad diagnosis, you just can't even imagine when you're not going to feel that way. And the fact is, in 5 minutes, you're not going to feel exactly that way, because time just changes things. You might feel worse in the next half hour, but you won't feel exactly the same way. So being able to breathe and say, this will pass. I won't be in this kind of pain always. I won't be feeling this vulnerable and terrified of cars forever. It's right now. And another one that she would say is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And which I don't know if it's true or not, but for some reason it helped me. It just made me feel like, well, I'm here. I didn't die. I didn't bleed out in the hospital. They didn't have to do surgery, so I've made it through. I'm now home, so I've made it the first step. I was in pretty good shape, so I wasn't allowed to put any weight on the right side of my body for 6 weeks. But I was in pretty good shape. I had been working out, so I could hold my body weight on my arms with a walker and kind of hop on one it wasn't pretty. But I would say, okay, that's great. And then the value of community for anyone who's gone through anything and is connected to a community, be it your neighbors, a religious community, whatever it is, that was just extraordinary. People showed up like no other. And as I have too, for many people, so it's reciprocal, and it's just the way it works in our little community. And so there were people bringing food, people offering to walk the dog, because I couldn't be left alone at all, at all, at the beginning. Another thing I learned that I thought is worth sharing is that in times of crisis, it's good to try to distinguish what is your mind doing the what ifs and the monkey mind and the and what is fact. What is it that we know to be true at this moment versus what is it that we are anticipating? Because we spend, I think, an awful lot of time as humans. I know I do. I try not to now because I have written about this. I'm talking about it all the time, so it's fresh in my mind. To talk myself down when I start doing that worrying or, like anxiety, monkey mind. Ask yourself if it's a known fact. And usually the answer is no. Usually the answer is no. I don't know that to be true. I'm speculating. I'm getting carried away. So I don't think you have to get hit by a car to change. I mean, we know our issues, right? Even you guys, right? You already kind of know what your stuff is. You've written in journals maybe, or you've been in therapy or whatever. You know your stuff. And I think our stuff keeps coming back throughout our lives. I'm still a person whose tendency is to overplan and try to do too much. That's not going to go away. But I can be more mindful about it. I can give myself, for instance, permission to read a novel on a weekday afternoon. Like, this is not something I ever could have done before. That would be only if I was on vacation and on a beach or something like that, or at a pool. I'm going to read another little excerpt. Fairly early in the book, too. So I'm now home from the hospital, and there's a lot of time to kill because I can do nothing. And at the beginning, the pain was so bad that I was on a lot of narcotics. No choice. I got off of them in 3 weeks, which was a goal of mine because, first of all, I hate them. Some people really like them. There wasn't a chance for me to get addicted because I really don't like the way that they make me feel. But I think at this point I was still in a lot of pain. So here. I don't know what to do with myself, lying here in bed hour after hour. The silence is torturous. If I can't do things, my mind starts to spin out. Keeping busy has always been my default to avoid an emotional downward spiral. Now, with nothing to do, I keep replaying the accident, the crash that sounds like an explosion, the terror of being on top of a moving vehicle, lying on the street in shock. This isn't new. Quiet has always been my enemy. I was at a Buddhist meditation session in Chicago during college, squirming, aware of every passing second, suppressing the urge to run out the door. Eastern religion sounded good, but the silence was unbearable. I'm a doer, always busy. I fill time by getting things done. But now I couldn't get things done if I wanted to. Don't have the strength. Can't concentrate. If I could, I would send thank you notes, like I did after Mom died, and after Raina died, and after Bob died. Those back-to-back losses, especially Mom's and Raina's, only 5 months apart, felt like Groundhog Day. Write the eulogy, place the obituary, deal with the mortuary, schedule the funeral, repeat. There were so many tasks that had to get done, and it didn't matter what kind of shape I was in. I just handled it. The grief could wait. It was always right there, bottled up just long enough to give everyone else space to have their reactions. The grief would explode in moments when I least expected it. Driving in the car or trying to go back to work too soon. A wave would reduce me to a quaking, crumbling, wailing shell of a human at the mercy of sobs coming from a place so deep I thought they might never end, and I'd close my office door for a chance to catch my breath. Months had passed, yet the grief was still debilitating, and I was embarrassed because it showed. Felt weak. Food and sleep felt like needs of a former self, the self who knew her place in the world. Cumulative loss can turn you into a shell of yourself. I think this is true for pain as well. You know, we think this idea that I said before about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, that chronic pain over a long period of time would make you tougher, but in fact, I don't think that's what happens. I think it breaks you down. It breaks you down to the point where you really don't have resources to battle it. And it doesn't surprise me at all that, you know, we had this OxyContin crisis and epidemic in our country. I've been watching Painkiller. Is anyone watching this series on?
I saw that.
It was written by my son's friend, and written and produced by him. And it is just absolutely riveting. I highly recommend it. Is it at Netflix? It's on Netflix right now. And you see how so many people who had injuries with this debilitating pain and still had to work through the pain, you know, and their doctors were prescribing this drug, and they got hooked really fast. I'm going to pick up at another spot right here. Connecting the dots between painful moments from my past is sparking new insights. Being in constant motion has always been a distraction, a way of not letting my guard down, of appearing to be on top of everything, of not confronting my sadness and disappointment. Now that my bones have healed, this is later, my tendency is to pick up the pace once again and go right back into overdrive. Yet my stamina hasn't fully returned. I begin to view my diminished energy as a gift that I should take advantage of. It forces me to slow down, which is something I ordinarily fight. I start to pay attention to what's happening around me, to how I feel at any given moment, and to what my options are, rather than thinking that my only choice is to barrel through. It's been 14 months since the accident, and 2 months after my ceremonial crossing of North San Pedro Road. So that's all described, the moment where I crossed the street for the first time. It's very emotional. In quiet moments, I'm aware of how much I'm learning about myself, how being forced to stop for so many months, to sit still and do nothing, has led to some revelations I don't want to forget. And so I make a list that remains on the inside door of my bathroom medicine cabinet. Well, here it says 10 years after the accident, but I'm here to tell you it's the 11th year and it's still there. It'll be there next year too. So here's the list. No, that's not the first one. I don't need to rush through life. I feel I'm more comfortable at an adjusted pace, feel safer, more aware. It's not just about how much I do in a day, but how I do what I do that matters. I never regret taking time to spread joy. I must accept that different people are different, with varying needs for intimacy and privacy. That helped me to understand, for instance, why some people did not show up for whatever reason. They couldn't, or it didn't occur to them. It was devastating. But then I had to realize I can still love them and forgive them. Good health is neither a given nor a right. Each pain-free moment is a miracle. My job is to continue to feel gratitude and carefully consider what I'm going to do with the precious time that I have. In the course of the book, my son proposes to his longtime girlfriend. My other son, at the time of the accident, was doing a semester of business school in Costa Rica. He told his then girlfriend that he was going to go home and help, and she was very upset with him because they had a plan to travel. And he said, you know, this relationship's never going to work. So very interesting how one went in one direction and one in the other. So we follow all of that through the book. The wedding happens. I'm not going to give you any details, but 2 years after the accident, I got a really, really scary diagnosis. So that happens. And I used a lot of what I learned after the accident to get through that. Also, there are funny parts of the book. I worked in rock and roll radio in San Francisco in the 70s, and that's how I met my husband. And so you can imagine there are stories that go through that, and some of them are in here. I'm going to end by sharing the very last part of the book, which is part of the epilogue, and then we'll move to questions. Sound good? Because I've now been yapping for a half an hour. Maybe I'll read the whole epilogue. Is that okay? All right, it's just 4 pages. So this is July 2021. For the very first time, I hear the phrase, "I love you, Yo-Yo," unsolicited from my granddaughter Zoe, and there's an explosion of warmth in my chest, a percolating ecstasy, an unmistakable tickle at the back of my nose. Tears blur my vision. If I had a mic, I would drop it. If I were on stage, I'd call, "Scene." This perfect blend of kindness and curiosity, spirit and humor, this flawless human specimen with cobalt blue eyes and wispy blonde curls says she loves me. I didn't know it could get better than her hugging my leg, clutching onto me in a moment of fear, putting her head on my shoulder as I sing her a lullaby, and then it did. Miracle moments in life offset the pain, panic, and grief we inevitably experience. Becoming a parent held that miraculous wonder. It was as if ours was the first child, the only child, the best child, the chosen one. Anybody relate? Then becoming a grandparent delivered an unprecedented level of awe, a love unknown, a feeling of, how can this possibly be? Our baby has had a baby. How do we deserve this? This feeling could melt a hardcore cynic, turn a terrorist into a peace activist. At the sight of her first real smile, assuredly not caused by gas, at her earliest chuckles, at her very first steps, biting sarcasm fell out of our lives. Bitterness became obsolete. Our children are finally here in our home once again, visiting from LA, where they both now live, after a year and a half of strict lockdown protocols. In December 2020, COVID-19 infected first the baby, then Max, and finally Blair, pregnant with their second child. They recovered and welcomed a healthy son who was every bit as miraculous as his big sister. "Yo-Yo," Zoe calls from the pack and play that is her temporary crib in our closet. "Hang on, honey," I respond, quickly strapping on the walking boot I've been in for 7 weeks so far. It's true, I broke my foot during our last trip to LA, missing a step and tumbling to the ground, but compared to everything else I've endured, this is merely an annoyance. "Where's Grandpa? I want to play golf." And so the day begins, a day in which I will push myself to the limit, but not beyond, because I want to experience every ounce of enjoyment by preparing food, launching art projects, playing catch, reading stories, making bottles, drinking wine with the 30-somethings. The opportunities to practice what I've learned are endless, because one thing is guaranteed: the hits will just keep on coming, in one form or another. When I broke my foot, I reminded myself that it could have been worse. I might have broken my hip when I fell. But again, I lucked out. This will heal. Accidents happen, and they're often beyond our control, but we do have a hand in how we respond. The inside door of my medicine cabinet still displays the list of lessons I learned from the accident. My closet still holds the poster wishing me well from the Brandeis Day School students. I will never get rid of my Wonder Woman bathrobe, the furry elephant hat from Danny, or the pink semicolon nightshirt from Fred, as they will forever remind me of how much caring and humor helps. During the seemingly endless months of COVID lockdown, on days when we were trapped at home because the smoke-filled air from Northern California wildfires was unbreathable, I told myself that at least I loved my home, my husband, my life. I left my job at the JCC and haven't looked back. My days unfold naturally now with yoga and hikes, writing and producing a weekly podcast, reading and giving what I can to those who've touched my heart. I try to reach out to people in my life who are struggling, to lend support where I can, to show up. In my mid-60s, I'm countering every ache, each confounding piece of technology, every instance of misplacing my glasses or AirPods, with a reminder that I'm lucky to be aging. My siblings didn't have that chance. It's hard to believe that I'm now 7 years older than Raina was when she died. She would be proud of who and how I am today, and that makes me smile. After so many years in and out of emotional turmoil, I've come to like myself and enjoy spending time alone. I make conscious choices to work, but not too much, to write, but not beat myself up when I don't, to provide ongoing support to those I love, aware that too much can feel smothering, to cook whole foods, to exercise and meditate, to spend some time alone, but most of my time in the company of others, because that is what nurtures and sustains me. I am an extrovert, case closed. My deeply treasured Jewish wisdom informs my days, and I regularly go back to the obligations without measure, Elu Devarim, which remind me to honor my parents, be compassionate, always learn, be welcoming, visit the sick, celebrate at weddings, be present for mourners, pray with sincerity, help people in conflict, and remember that the study of Torah, of truth in whatever form, leads to all of this. My tolerance for meanness and rancor is shrinking, and my appreciation for kindness and expressions of love continues to grow. I vow to stop at every lemonade stand and, like my father, pet every dog I'm allowed to pet. Warning, if you ever go on a walk with me, it's really annoying because I really do that. You can attest. My life is enriched when I notice the beauty and the fragrance of flowers, am moved by the artistry of musicians and dancers, and can marvel at great writing, incredible painting, and even exceptional performances on the basketball court. Our lives are hard and messy, unpredictable and glorious, and it's our job to learn about ourselves, to learn what makes us unique and recharges our batteries so we can make meaning of our days, spread joy wherever we can, and contribute in some positive way to this colossal project known as life. Zoe asks Alexa, the digital assistant she assumes is on duty, to play the song Let It Go from Frozen, a film she has yet to see. I delight in watching her sweep across our backyard, flailing her arms, twirling her tiny body, oblivious to how she's being perceived, to the impact that she's having on others. My heart overflows with deep pleasure as I witness her joy, her freedom, her purity, her creative expression, her natural ability to let it go. All is right. Maybe there are no accidents. Thank you.